And we're going to start the meeting with the brainwave of George's. We're a community of experts, basically. You're all expert in your own individual field by definition. But where does an expert go to get advice or confirmation or just an outside opinion? Where do you actually go to? Because you're not supposed to need it, are you? Because you're an expert. Well, for example, right, an HRB, we know the definition of an HRB is a higher risk building, not high risk, because the powers that be have decided that saying high risk is a bit intimidating to residents, so it's better to say high O risk. Now, that's not to say a high-rise building, which surprisingly some people do actually believe that's still the case. Is it a complex building? What does that even mean, a complex building? Well, our community, we're probably in the top 5–10% of the industry in terms of knowledge, which sounds possibly a bit outlandish thing to say, but you're all here because you want to impart knowledge or get knowledge. That's why you're actually here. You want to be kept informed. Well, obviously, the variations around this stuff, not everyone's going to know everything. But collectively, as a group, we probably do. There's probably very few questions that somebody could ask that somebody in our community couldn't answer. So George has had a good idea. George belongs to a group called BIM for Beers. And they're not a big group, but they're very active, particularly on the beer front. Now, what he thinks is it's a good idea if we set up one for BIM in Am for our community, where people can go and just put up a question, yeah, in a non-judgmental place. Nobody's going to say, well, you should know that. And there'll be somebody out there in our community who, in all likelihood, can answer that question. So the plan is to set up a WhatsApp group. So if you're interested in joining that and becoming involved in that, put WhatsApp in the chat. And then we will get back to you with how to join or an invite or however, whatever just does it. Okay, now, without further ado, we have a couple of quizzes today. Well, polls we're doing today. So, Jess, have you got the link to poll 1 in the chat?
Yeah.
Is it in the it's in the chat now. Poll number 1. If you click on that, please, and just if you can put it up so you can share it so I can see it on screen. So if you click on poll 1, there are 5 short questions there. It's anonymous. You don't have to put your email in or anything. It just enables, gives us the wisdom of crowds. And the more of you that do that, the more wisdom we'll get. So Jess, if you can share that, and everybody can click on that and look through. Okay, so how well does your CEO or FD understand their duties under the Building Safety Act? And there are various percentages for you to make a judgment on that. How well does your CAO or FD understand their duties under the Building Safety Act? What do you think? Okay, scroll down, GIFs. How confident are you that your current projects will deliver accurate and complete Regulation 38 info? And again, there's a series of percentages. So, how confident are you that your current projects will deliver accurate and complete Regulation 38 information?
Could I just say, Richard, this is completely anonymous.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So we're just trying to get a feel for the awareness in the industry, so that we understand what level of work is needed to bring the rest of the industry up to your levels of awareness.
Okay, number 3. and this is you speaking, my organisation regularly checks that the contents of the fire and emergency file are accurate and will be updated with any changes. Is that true? Yes or no about your organisation? My organisation?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Again, anonymous.
Well, it's all anonymous, George. I said that at the beginning.
No, I'm just repeating it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's all anonymous. Don't worry. It's not getting that anywhere. My organisation regularly checks that the contents of the fire and emergency file are accurate and will be updated with any changes. Yes or no? Number 4. I am confident that the H&S and O&M information about my building is accurate and will be updated with any changes. Again, yes or no? Are you confident of that statement? Are you confident that the HS and O&M information about the building is accurate and will be updated with any changes? Yes or no? And the last one. Should a fire risk assessment include a check that the information in the fire and emergency information and secure information box is complete and correct? Should it? Yes or no? Should a fire risk assessment include a check that the information in the fire and emergency information and secure information box is complete and correct? Yes or no? Okay, excellent, great. So we haven't got a space on the agenda for the results of this poll, but I will make space for that somewhere, don't worry. Okay, right, now then, moving swiftly on. Damien Ward from Checkmate is going to give us a quick overview on delays at gateways. Are you there, Damien?
I'm here, Richard. Yeah, thank you.
Great, take it away.
Okay. I did have a colleague join in as well. So if you have joined, Gavin.
I have joined, Damien.
You have joined. Okay.
There we go.
That means the full team is here, the full complement. Okay.
If you want to launch the presentation, Damien, I'll just give a quick intro.
Yeah, hopefully you can all see it now. If one or two you could just agree. So yeah, that's fine.
Super.
Okay, Gavin, do you want to take it away?
So yeah, I'm Gavin Slattery. I'm joined by Damien. We're going to give a very quick whistle-stop tour through our experiences of Gateway 2. Just to give a bit of background, Checkmate Fire, for those who don't know, are a passive fire protection business. We do fire door remediations, replacements, and fire stopping to buildings. 95% of what we do is in occupied buildings rather than new build buildings. So our experiences are talking about occupied buildings rather than new build. So Damien's going to give you a bit of background as to the Gateway 2 applications we've progressed so far. And I'm just going to talk through some of the challenges and experiences we've had to date.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. Yeah, so we presented this last week at our trade association ASFP's annual general meeting, and I think it went down quite well. The building safety regulator were present there themselves. So sort of where we're up to as a business, as a specialist contractor in passive fire protection, is we've submitted 5 HRB building control applications to the building safety regulator since Gateway 2 was open. 3 of those applications have been approved. 2 of them we're still awaiting a decision, although we have now been in contact directly with those 2 projects with the lead from the BSR. And at the moment, touch wood, none of them have been rejected. So that's sort of where we're up to as a business in terms of volume of applications. The types of applications, so as a contractor in passive fire protection, the applications we've put in have been for specific tasks within the building. So it's been fire stopping to existing compartmentation lines, or it's been fire door remediation or repairs, or it's been full wholesale replacement of existing fire doors within those buildings. The terms of value across those 5 HRB applications is somewhere in the region of 6 million. We'll go on to the timings later, but those were budgets that were set between ourselves and clients in 2024. In terms of scope, so what was the scope of that project? So it was all within the communal areas. So it was focused on protection of escape routes. And like Gavin said, they were all existing occupied buildings. In terms of size, there was anything between 200 and 2,000 residents within these buildings. The delivery, so there was a mixture of delivery for these applications. Some of these applications were completed with the benefit of having a detailed, itemized line-by-line inspection report that Checkmate did in advance of the application, but some of them were, to use the term, sort of find and fix. There was no inspection in advance. It was more a scope of the works that needed to be carried out in terms of quantities. I suppose the keynotes, specifically in relation to our applications, is that there was no amendments to any existing fire strategy that was in place. There was no changes to any door or fire compartmentation wall ratings, and we didn't move any compartmentation lines as part of these applications. Timing-wise, since we submitted our first application and those 3 that were returned with approval, that's taken 26 weeks on average. The remaining 2 that we're awaiting sort of the final pieces of feedback, we think that'll take about another 4 weeks. So we're about 1 week into that now. So we think we're about 3 weeks away from getting those last 2 approved, and that will take it to about 30 weeks in total. I think some of the frustrations that we've had as a business is where we know about fire safety issues within these buildings. Residents are at risk. The client wants to do the right thing and get on and do the work. But there's this big long delay between submitting the application and getting the approval, which is one part of the delay. But if you sort of think back to all the work that you need to do before you submit the application, obviously you need to understand what the issue is, the size of the issue. You need to quantify it. You need to do your inspections. You need to then review the findings of that inspection. You then need to start trying to put budgets in place with your board. Once you've got those approvals, you then submit your application, and then you've got your 26 weeks, 26 to 30 week delay. These are all real concerns that we have around the time it's taken from identifying an issue to making that issue safe. You know, and there's issues in some of these projects that we've had where the client's now having to reduce the scope. So the budgetary challenges that were approved in 2024 are now getting taken away, or they're getting reduced. And it leaves that client in a really difficult, unnervy position of how they get their building at the point where they want to, where, you know, it's a compliant, safe building to live in. And the other thing that we as a business still don't know, for all the applications that we've put through, the costs. So the BSR has a schedule of rates that they apply when reviewing the applications as part of their wider multidisciplinary team. We've yet to receive a single invoice for any of those costs. We brought that up with the building safety regulator last week, and there wasn't really much you could say. I think we just have to sit and wait and see what those additional costs are. So that's sort of a bit of a snapshot of where we're up to. I think the next couple of slides is more about sort of the key challenges and understandings and takeaways that we've gleaned from our experience specifically within this Gateway 2 challenge. If you want to cover off some of these, Gavin?
Certainly there was a period of learning how to complete the applications, what's expected through an application, and that's more pre-validation stage to make sure that these surveys or these applications were completed correctly. I think there's definitely a comment here about the way the questioning is put for Gateway 2 applications are very much lean towards new build rather than occupied buildings, and also very much focused on a wide range of trades working in these buildings rather than very specific trades. Very much a lot of what's required in the Gateway 2 we considered as business as usual for our business. We're a third-party accredited business doing these works, governed by our third-party schemes. So in our operating system, the Checkmate Way, a lot of these items were covered. There were areas that weren't, and there were areas specific to high-risk buildings that we need to alter our standard operating procedures. I think a really interesting piece is how prepared clients were for this. Do our clients understand their obligations? do they understand what they need to prepare and put in place just for us to be able to put a validation through under the building control application process. So it's not to be underestimated how prepared clients need to be in terms of having fire strategies in place, drawings in place, up-to-date information on their buildings. I think consistency in the approach to answers. You know, we've done 4 or 5 applications exactly the same way, and we definitely had challenges in terms of what was approved and not approved in very, very different ways and responses from the building safety regulator when we were following a very clear process. So although the applications were very similar in nature, just different buildings, the questioning we got back from the building safety regulator were very varied and not consistent. Next slide, please, Damien. The restricted method of applications, it sounds simple, but the file name formatting, you're only allowed to submit PDFs, was very difficult, very limited uploads that you could put through the system. It became quite cumbersome to put an application in, and our applications were relatively simple compared to a new build application. I've just mentioned identical applications, same supporting information with very different levels of queries through that validation process. And then during the validation process, when you submit a BCA, it was you don't get anybody to talk to. It is very much one-way traffic sending that information in. So you don't know whether you've been validated for many weeks, and when it comes back, you don't actually have anyone to talk to explain the project. So that regulatory lead comes in a little bit late. Levels of detail not relevant for application. You know, how wide a road is outside an existing HRB, the drainage on the HRB, not relevant to our application at all, but processes that we needed to go through to get validation. And then our view of it is there's not enough competency or consistency of regulatory leads. That was evident in the questioning that was coming back around, you know, standard fire stopping surveys and details that we're putting forward. It was very clear that the people reviewing the applications didn't have the ability or capacity to review in the right levels. Extension requests coming through constantly, kind of every 4 weeks asking for an extension, but nothing happening between those extension requests. So very, very challenging in terms of managing the client expectations. And then if we needed to do a change, because things change over the time, it's 26 weeks. In one particular case, the PD changed on a contract. How do we change during an application? So some challenges there. And then the kind of final pieces really on the next slide, Damien. Key learnings. Although the application process doesn't allow you is very restrictive in terms of what you can update, add a document that signposts everything. So add a document that shows the building safety regulator exactly where you're putting information, especially if you're providing information that you know you're going to be requested at some point, but perhaps isn't in the first application questions. Find and fix, Damien mentioned it, rather than a full survey, potentially a simplified solution for occupied buildings to actually get an application through. It sounds silly, but there's less for the BSR to review. There isn't a full survey for them to review. It's just a scope to review. Having a very clear defined scope of requirements that's very clear to the BSR early on as to what we're doing in that building and what the outcome will be. I think the BSR offering an actual meeting, a Teams meeting, early in the process is very useful and will help massively. And assigning regulatory leads to large clients or contractors that are used to the type of work that they're applying for. So fire stopping experts, fire door experts being involved from the regulatory point of view very, very early on. And then the view from us is an accredited passive fire business, potentially having some kind of fast track application process. Everything we do in that building, if we're not affecting the compartment lines, if we're not changing the fire strategy, should improve the fire safety in that building. So it's about having a quicker process potentially for the passive fire and maybe even the active fire industry. Next one, David.
Yeah, I mean, we're running short on time, so can we?
This is the final summary. I think, yeah, the final summary is that I think the process is better. We're reassured by the HSE that the speed of applications is better. Some of the issues around staffing have been improved. We're fully behind the process, but it's got there's definitely improvements to be made from both HSE and contractors in terms of the standard of the applications they put in. Thank you.
So going in the right direction, but not there yet.
Yes, I think that's a reasonable summary.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Florentina, briefly, please. Briefly.
It's briefly. It's not necessarily a question. Last week I've been on the Cape course first week, and basically I've had some off the book conversations with the trainers that were there. Some of them clearly working for local authorities, big building control, and for private companies. And what they say is that HSE had the regulator has not paid their bills. They owe them money since probably last year, and a lot of them they refuse now the regulator when they come to them to ask, can you review, can you work with us, or as part of the gateway submissions. So I don't know how improved the process of collaboration between the regulator and the other approved inspectors is, but clearly is not there, because what I hear is that many of them, they do not want to work with the regulator externally because they don't pay, basically.
And I think that's very, very, very important, because those multidisciplinary teams, I think the HSE were saying that that was the challenge in terms of getting the right competent staff to assist.
Cyprian
may help.
Yeah.
Cyprian.
Yes, hi. My question is, you said in the keynotes that when you said no amendment to the fire strategy, are you referring that, is it that you did not make any amendments, or they are querying, or you're saying that there are no amendments to the fire strategy to be made? And if there are no amendments to the fire strategy to be made, did you submit a fire safety statement outlining on the back of that fire strategy, outlining the works to be undertaken? Because I'm finding that to be a challenge at the moment with in some projects where, like you say, Gavin, there's no amendment to the fire strategy, and they think that you don't need to submit anything. So can you just elaborate on this? Yeah, let me know what's what.
I can, if you want, Gavin. Yes, so the fire strategy that was in place was a retrospective one. It was written post-build completion, and it was written in terms of how this building needed to be working, obviously in the case of an emergency, for it to be safe. So the strategy was fine. The issue was the strategy the building didn't comply to the strategy. So i.e. if a 60-minute compartment line is required as per the strategy, and we look at the 60-minute compartment line and it's got defects, well, we need to bring that building now up to the level of that fire strategy. And yes, we did have to submit compliance statements for all of the functional requirements of the building regs across AD B, for example. We also had to look at approved document A as well for structural.
Okay, Florentina, really quickly.
Thank you very much.
And then the building would have a building safety case, which the client must update anyway after all these works, and keep it in line and update it with all the information from your works to make sure that their building safety case is not any given point in time is in line with how the building is and operates, and is not a year old or 2 years old or God knows how old. So but in terms of compliance, have you obtained all these compliance declarations from maybe a structural consultant, or it was just you that have made the specifications and produced that design aspect of the project?
So for the structural part of it, we did that ourselves. We understand the works we do, and we understand the impact of our works on the structural capacity of the building. So we did that ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. Okay,
that's brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. Can you share that presentation in the chat? Is that okay?
I'll share it with George. If I can't put it in the chat, I'll share it with George directly.
Fantastic. Thanks very much indeed.
Happy for any direct questions. If you have our email address, more than happy for any further questions separately if you like.
That's brilliant. Or put them in the chat and we can forward them. No, that's great. Okay, George, you're going to have to be brief with some of your introduction and conclusion.
Yeah. So basically, what I'm going to go through what we're now looking to do in terms of the Golden Thread Task Force, because as Richard said earlier, what we've got in the room here in our group, we've probably got the top 5% of people in the industry who are aware of what is needed under the Golden Thread. So our big challenge is to persuade the other 95% how important this is. And to that end, what we've done is created a presentation that we're going to share with you as Golden Thread Task Group members to actually promote out to your clients and also to your senior managers, because I suspect that I'm not prejudging what the results of the poll are going to be, but I think it's likely that a lot of the people will have responded that their directors don't see this as being a priority. Now, I may be wrong about that, but I think it's quite serious. So what I'm showing you now is something that's a presentation that we've put together as a group, and I'd like your feedback on to see if you want to use it as part of your delivery, because we've created that. So I attended a workshop last week, a conference last week, which is where I met Gavin and Damien at the ASFP, and Neil Hope Collins from the BSE, the Building Safety Regulator, was there. And one of the things I picked up from that was that 80% of the submissions aren't for new build, they're for remedial works. And that seems to have surprised, well, not seems to have, I think it surprised the regulator as to how much was going on. And they, Neil said it was quite shocking what was happening under the radar that hadn't been there. And he said that some of the applications, 44% of them, were being rejected because people hadn't even provided the documents that were listed in the on the website, which is staggering, really, when you consider the importance of that's happening. But he also said that the industry is best placed to write the guidance. Yeah. Now I am that's what we're hoping to do here, to be able to come up with an industry-led initiative to actually say what good looks like. So the best practice. So that's what I'm going to come on to. I also attended a Bureau Veritas meeting last night, and they were saying these people are people that work for the regulator. I don't know if they've been paid, Florentina, but what was interesting was that well over 50% of them are being rejected based on fire safety. So I'm going to be looking at what I'm going to go through here on fire safety. It's not obviously everything, but it's something that I wanted to mention. Tim Galloway from the HSE said 75% of applications at Gateway 2 are being rejected based on missing or flawed information, which is, again, surprising. But anybody involved in asset management won't be that surprised, because in most cases, FMs have to commission surveys to go and survey a building that's just been completed to find out what was installed in it. And obviously the Golden Thread was put together to try and eliminate a lot of that. But we've been involved, as a lot of people misunderstand the Golden Thread. We've been involved in the Golden Thread right from the start, and we really do understand it. So what we've got within our community is people that have already signed up to say that they want to be part of this, and they want to share their knowledge. And if you are interested in getting involved and you're not on that list, then please email us and let us know. What we're doing is looking at having a badge, or we are creating a badge of assessment to make you Golden Thread aware. So this is for clients, ideally, to say that you're aware of the and probably committed and interested in it. So what we're doing at the moment, the Golden Thread group have been using digital asset capture, 360 photos, and comparing that with the O&M information. So here, for example, just come back on that just for a second. What this is doing here, it's identifying that this is information from the secure information box, and this is telling you that that's a solid wall, whereas in fact the 360 photo has picked up that it's definitely not a solid wall. So that's a really dangerous thing from fire brigade's perspective, and that's the sort of validation that we think needs to happen. And in this particular case, there was 4 different options in terms of the internal floor layouts. Which one's right? Does it matter which one you give to the fire brigade? I think probably it does. The other aspect of this is what they're doing. They're using 360 photos to go around and tag the 360 photos with the assets that they can see. This is going to be immensely useful from a building a safety case perspective, but also to be able to say which AOVs have got actuators and what type they are, and where are the smoke detectors, and also to be able to use the 360 photos, which we think is a really very, very low cost and simple way of navigating around this, to be able to say where are the information about, say, dry risers, for example. This remembers where the dry risers are, so you just click on the schedule and it takes you to them. So if you're interested in getting involved in the digital asset capture, just put digital asset capture in the chat, and Barry and and Chris Aldridge will pick that up later. I think one of the challenges is that in many cases we've got the regulations, but people are paying lip service to them to a certain extent and trying to find the most cost-effective way to get around them. But then, what happens if we do that? What we've been doing within BIM for Housing for years is that this is a Miro board that you can join with, and it's there to be able to actually identify or get people collaboratively to identify what's needed. And we can, if you're interested in that, we can connect you with it. You can get access to it from the BIM for Housing website. And what we've also been doing, and this is where I think we've got credibility with the HSE to say that we could be an industry specifier, is that we've taken that knowledge. We've been running workshops for the last 2 or 3 years, and we've got deep dive information on all of the principal fire critical assets. So sprinkler systems, AOVs. In this case, this is fire doors, but we've done a consistent thing of saying what questions, what do we need to know about assets? What risk does it mitigate? What do people do to it to stop it from working? So we've done this for all of these asset types, worked out what the component parts are, and also lists of the records. And if you're interested in this, there's a real deep dive, as I say, that you can pick up and use. So what do we need to know about construction of and installation of fire doors? And then we've also built this with the team. We've had over 100 people involved in this initiative to create a standardized fire door inspection. So again, this is all available as part of what we're doing. This was for fire doors, with a simple way of working this through. And then we're currently doing something for fire stopping and cavity barriers. Can you mute your microphone, please? And by doing that, it means that we can hopefully stop the sort of delays, or reduce the delays that are taking place at the moment, because there's just not enough information. So what should we do about it, really? Well, part of it is to look at the building as a complete whole. So the golden thread, not simply as individual components, it's how they work together. and using this on the basis of saying, if a fire breaks out in a kitchen, what are the measures that are in place to stop it from spreading? Now, there's compartmentation, but compartmentation is actually made up of a number of different critical assets. And if any one of them fails, then the whole compartment fails. So therefore, just doing fire door inspections isn't good enough. We also need to then look at the other systems that need to kick in to protect against that. So this is this golden thread thinking that we need to get people to buy into. And the other thing is being able to federate information that is being created in a range of different tools and applications, but then making it so that the product information and also the location of that space or the location of that asset and which spaces it's protecting are coordinated. So the location of things becomes critical. And therefore, if we've got software applications that are being used for inspection, then they're all referring back to the same unique asset. So they all need to be referencing the same information. And it's also a matter of saying, well, there's supposed to be an as-built plan of the building with all those elements in it. And the legislation requires people to confirm, or clients to confirm that they've received that information. And we don't think that people are actually checking adequately because it's really, really hard to check. And we're going to come on to that a bit later. One of our colleagues is going to explain that. But these are legal requirements. And if people sign that declaration and it's not right, then they've committed a criminal act. Now, it may be that they're not being prosecuted at the moment, but that the person that actually signs that and the organisation are liable. My understanding is it's for years. I think it's 15 years. I may be wrong about that. There's probably people on the call that can correct that, but it's certainly a long-term commitment. So why do we need to know, for example, where fire dampers are? Well, part of the reason for that is that if, for example, there's a fire and that piece of ductwork collapses, you need to make sure that there's a breakaway joint so it doesn't pull it out the wall. Now, people cleverer than me know this, but what this is doing is this is illustrating how a model can be used to identify where the fire dampers are, but in a very simple way to be able to locate them. So here we've got the different fire dampers, so the product information. So this is a good example of a range of different software applications working together to pull together the golden thread information. In this case, we've got where all those dampers are. So this is something that can simply be identified as what space that fire damper is protecting. And we can then go from there into a location of where that particular asset is. And the 360 photo takes you to it. Now, that we think is a really important part of the process. And we've got integrated in here all of the documents. So it means that the connection between the different elements is being addressed. The challenge is if that information is just put into an O&M manual and it's not connected up, then it's like being given a pile of jigsaw pieces without the box lid. And the problem with that is that people just sign them off. So the way in which we're addressing that is to make it so that the model, the asset information model, which is made up of all this disconnected information, can then be federated. So rather than it being disconnected and people having to manually go and find things, and Florentina was telling me yesterday, her brain melted when she was having to do this. What we're doing is how can we check to make sure that we've got all the information and therefore glue it all together in a way that then can be verified, and again, using 360 photos. There's nothing about BIM here. This is all about just information and referencing documents and information properly. And we can build on that because there's government standards that I wasn't aware of these until recently, and I've looked at these and they're really good. So they're actually going down to the level of details to standardize the way floors are all called. On projects that we've been reviewing, we find that the floor names, basic stuff, are different. Exactly the same with the information about the assets. So there's a structure here that we can follow and adopt, and that's really where we're going with this, to be able to make it so that from a golden thread perspective, clients have got a simple way of saying, where is that AOV, what system is it part of, what's the product, who installed it, etc. So this is the sort of methodology we want to get to. And then it means that clients can have a dashboard of what information is missing, so they can focus on collecting it. So we've been through this process now with all the major fire industry associations, and they're all on board with it. So what we really want to do is get more people involved in this process. We want to provide the tools and the templates and the methodologies for you as a collective or individually to carry out this sort of service. So that's me, Richard. Sorry.
Okay, excellent. Anybody got any very, very, very quick questions on that?
We've got
George, can you just send a link to that government website that you just demonstrated? Lovely, thanks.
George, very quickly, thank you very much indeed. We as scientific instrument makers can help tremendously because we have the technology to do an awful lot of things which at the moment people think cannot be done. So thank you.
Excellent. Let's catch up then, Bernard. Yeah.
Delighted.
Okay, that's what we do. We introduce people. Right, digital handover and templates, which I think is Paul Oakley, isn't it?
Just before we move on to that, Richard, could I just say, so if there's anybody in the group, what we're expecting is that some client organisations are probably at Gateway 2, maybe Gateway 3, and they're probably going to be concerned about whether they've got the right information that they need to be able to get through the gateways. Now, rather than waiting until it's actually they've made a submission and then being rejected and then having to go through that cycle, the proposition that we're making is that if clients wish to let us know that they'd like to be put in touch with people that can do that type of audit, then that would be great. So if you're a client and that's something that would interest you, having somebody independent from your project team to actually do that review, because one of the challenges is that everybody that's in the project team, including probably yourselves, everybody's trying to get a certificate of completion, and therefore everybody's under pressure to just sign stuff off, and it becomes a nightmare afterwards. What we're saying is that if we can do an initial audit of your information, and it won't be us that's doing it, it'll be members of the project, of the task force. So what we want to do is have clients and also people who are willing and interested in offering the service. And when people have gone through that process, we can give them a golden thread aware badge, as it were. So if you're interested in being on the supply side of that, providing those consultancy services, or you're interested in being on the client side of things, could you put that into the chat? Okay.
Okay, so George has asked me to take you through case study in terms of what I've been doing on what was a significant construction project, supposedly by award-winning contractors with their BIM processes, with the your top information management consultant supporting them, and all the ISO 19650 requirements you can think of, all this terms of this documentation.
Money developers and contractors must.
But it was, yeah. It's typical in terms of what's happened. In terms of you've got 3 buildings, but the architect started off with one big Revit file, so therefore each discipline just produced one big Revit file. But they actually didn't consider that actually those 3 buildings were 3 different facilities, and basically they provided one big Kobe file and one massive zip file containing all the documentation for those 3 buildings, and none of the documentation contained any metadata which was of any use to it. So they didn't consider that basically each building is a separate facility, handed over differently, different uses, and managed different independently by the FM teams looking after them. So the other issue was basically the documents they provided was a record of the project archive. They didn't identify specifically what the documents that were required for the asset management team to maintain and operate the building. So out of about 17,000 files delivered, there was about 1,000 that were concrete cube test files, plus various other things, which may need to be there in the project archive, but they're not there as a requirement for up-to-date asset management. The folder naming, as I said, there was 3 buildings. So they started off with things like fabric, building 1, 2, 3. And then you had the consultants such as architects. And then under that, you had buildings 1, 2, 3, an electrical building 1, 2, 3, etc. And each of the work packages. So you had building 1, 2, 3 at multiple levels throughout the folder structures, which created these absolutely enormous path lengths, which create a whole series of different issues in terms of how we try to extract it. And there was big problems with actually a lot of the files being delivered, because when they extracted them out of the CDE, a lot of files were left behind because of the failures of the path naming, etc. Another issue was naming of the work packages. The work packages were named based on the company that had done them. So yeah, I've just done like Bob the Builder, Colin Jones, but etc. But then they named their O&Ms, project name onm.pdf. So it told you absolutely nothing about what that O&M was actually dealing with in terms of which work package. So that was one of the other things to actually go through and actually identify those. And even on the front covers of the O&M's further work packages, it told you the company name, but it didn't tell you what it was dealing with. The export from the CDE, that they provided all this as part of the zip file, but what it did is it took the sort of 19650 type identifier, added the description plus the status and the revision. The things like the status text was things like this: CR construction record or A5 suitable for RRBA stage 5 approval. These are all tacked onto the file name. And with the massive big pathing, we were blowing out the 256 characters, creating all sorts of issues there. The descriptions they used had things like commas and alpha sounds in them. So again, we couldn't actually put them back into zips because to upload them to other things, we had to end up manually going through, renaming things or running scripts to deal with that because of the naming conventions that we used. So we took this whole task in terms of how we broke the documentation that was down into different buildings. We changed the work packages, structured those so they were named so you actually knew what you were looking for. We used a utility to basically go through all of the folders, extract the data, the bit of coding that we wrote, and create our own Excel file. So we could then basically go through, store the old name and the new name against things, and our folder structure, new folder structure. And then we also decomposed the file identifiers. So under the BS or the ISO 19650, we know that where is a -A, basically that's architecture, etc. We knew that ZXX001 was building 1, 04 was level 4. So from the coding, the fields, we could actually put some metadata against the files. We also knew where the description was, so in terms of the length of those for particular file lengths, and we could also get the file types. So if we knew it was a DWG, we know it's an Autodesk drawing file. So this basically allowed us to add to the metadata to deal with it. So we've gone through, as I said, 17,000 odd files, restructured the whole project using these utilities and time. And hopefully now we've got a much better chance of being able to find information, the information that we trust, because no longer we've got all the duplicates that were all over the place. And there's even multiple revisions of the same file sometimes, but we've still kept the history and the audit trail.
Thank you, Paul. That's excellent. So the principal idea here is that these are the sorts of tools, processes, and utilities that the members of the consulting group of the Golden Thread Task Force will have access to. So if you are a data geek, as it were, that are interested in doing that, don't take that the wrong way, Paul. Then we can we can share that with you. So maybe put data management into the chat. Okay,
Ahmed.
Hi there.
Richard, we've got a question Q&A after this. So,
George, would you stop interrupting my chairing?
Okay.
Thank you. Ahmed.
Just wanted to ask about a couple of things.
Very quickly, give me one. Give me one.
Why isn't this included in the IDP, and why isn't workflows imposed on the CDE for the transition of a project information model to an asset information model, where the exact purpose of that is to stop things such as that ever being received in this manner?
I think the big issue on those is these are sort of the typical things under BS 1192, the naming conventions and stuff. But stuff like that has now seems to have got forgotten under ISO 19650. You're right that, but I think a lot of the issue was the naming of files from, let's say, the architects and the design teams was dealt with. But when it came to the subcontractors, and the big issue was descriptions when they're putting stuff into the CDE, that's where a lot of the special characters seem to have been put in. And when they exported the format they exported from the CDE, where they included the description, that created a lot of the problems.
Ryan, very briefly,
just very briefly, Paul, you mentioned COBie. Did you get COBie data in spreadsheet formats that could be machine readable, consumed into a system database that can support COBie?
Yes, we did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But there you go. Anna, very briefly.
A fantastic presentation, Paul. I just wanted to agree with everything you were saying. The reason why this happens is that obviously during construction, everyone is naming things because however it fits them to do it, yeah. And unless there is a very strict information manager on board who is looking both at what client needs to receive and also what the team needs to be doing, and then translating between those two and making sure everyone does what they need to be doing, none of this will happen. Yeah. So even if we had the best standards in place, you do need to have a mom in place. Yeah. A person who is looking at everyone and saying, no, you need to do this like this because the client wants this. And also the client needs to know.
Yeah, no alsos. Sorry, Anna, no alsos. Right. We're going to move swiftly on to Cliff, who's got a case study on digital handover.
Hello, I'm just sharing my screen. Thank you very much. I'm going to go through the scenario. Sorry, my name's Cliff. I'm an information manager, so you might want to call me Mum from now on. So I like that. The scenario is that you're the client and you've been asked to confirm receipt of the golden information at handover. And we're also going to be looking at the regulation 38 information specifically for emergency lighting. So I'm just going to take you through what that actually involves at the coalface, if you've been asked to either build a golden thread on somebody's behalf, or whether you've just been asked to confirm that you have everything. So one of the challenges is that the documents aren't all as-built. Sometimes they're marked up as built, but they're full of notes. Now, this is the door schedule, and some of these notes are asking things like, are there smoke seals on this door? That's quite an important question. We don't know whether it's been answered or not. So you might be able to confirm that you've got this document, but is it correct? Here's another example of the same document.
Can everybody see this? Can everybody see this? I've got a lot of chat in the chat saying they can't see the presentation.
I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
I can see it.
Okay, well, maybe they...
Okay, carry on, Cliff, carry on.
Yeah, sure, no worries. Okay, also, so I have to say that a lot of these things are small, but they add up to death by 1,000 cuts when you're trying to actually get organised. So we have spelling mistakes. So if you were looking for the life safety tray using OCR, it wouldn't find it within this drawing because safety is spelled incorrectly. Anything about the retained facade, that's spelled incorrectly. Schematic instead of schematic, so you won't find these drawings either if you're trying to find them. Also, inside documents, you have location to be confirmed depending on the CBRE review. So that also, has that been answered or not? Has the location, been confirmed? We also have notes inside technical transmittals. Don't know whether they've been resolved. The same here. More examples, and also Paul touched on it earlier. When you're downloading files, if the path name is too long, it'll stop downloading it, but you might just get the file path, but nothing, the file will actually be empty. So that's another, difficulty. Also, sometimes you're given information, you're just given maybe a login to a system, and when you go to the system, you find that you've got to find your way around the folder naming convention, the file naming convention, and you'll find that there are zip files. It looks pretty simple when you open that, but you might find that this zip file contains zip files as well, and those zip files will contain trees and folder structures inside there with files, and you've got to sort of unpick it all and peel it all apart and put it all back together again. So this is how many zip files there were on this particular project. There were about 40 zip files, and the system that we were downloading from didn't allow you to download zip files as a bulk, so they all had to be downloaded individually and unzipped individually. We also have challenges with inconsistent folder structure and folder naming conventions. I know that Paul has just touched on that. So here's a few examples. We've got proposed level 01, and here we've got it the other way around. You've got the ground floor and then level. We've got here first floor level, and here we've got second floor level and then second level 2. So you can't just find everything pertaining to a particular level just by doing a simple search. You're only going to get some of the information. Also, when it comes down to fire stopping, we noted that whilst the drawings actually indicated where the fire stopping was, it wasn't clear which product you would use in that location. And we found 9 different products, but it's unclear as to which product to use where. On the reflected ceiling plan, we noticed that it's very illegible. There's an emergency light here, just underneath here somewhere. So in order to find that, you're going to have to open the document, zoom in and pan around so that it's almost, very, very large on the screen. So unclear, obscured information is another problem. I mean, even though I'm zoomed right in now, you can just about read the fact that there's an emergency exit light there. I've also got difficulties with, there's a document number here, and that's the document, and this file is attached to it. When you download all the information from some of these systems, you're not sure whether you're actually getting all of the information, because some of it is embedded, some of it is linked. So it might say you've got 1,500 files. By the time you've downloaded it, you might only have 1,000, or you might have 2,000. So you can never really be sure whether or not you have all the information about the building. So this little bit is focused specifically on Regulation 38. So let's say you were you're working for a housing association and you were asked to make yourself familiar with this building and find out about the emergency lighting. So you might start off with the the fire safety manual, which would tell you the emergency lighting. To look for it, you need to look at the fire strategy, MEP consultants, specifications, electrical lighting record drawings, architect's reflected ceiling plan, the health and safety file. And for testing and commissioning, you need to go here. For associated record drawings, you need to go here. And for installers details, installer competence, product details, specifications, and any assumptions, you need to look in this package. So you need to refer to 8 different locations for 13 different pieces of information just for one system. And this is what this looks like. So you go into the system and you type in fire strategy or emergency lighting, and you will find some information in some of the documents. Once you've found the document, you then open it and you get little snippets of information, little snippets everywhere. You might find a specification. This is all about British standards that need to be met. Again, snippets of information. This is just searching for emergency lighting. This is also tender issue. Is that correct? Should we be looking at tender issue at handover? Maybe this needs to be updated. When you're looking at the specifications, you do start to get some images, so it starts to make a little bit more sense. Emergency backup, so you might want to assume that that is emergency light. You can make the assumption that it is, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just the backup that's emergency. And then you find something here. So this looks like an emergency exit sign to me. So maybe that's it, but without actually knowing, you're just going to be confronted with maybe hundreds of different lights, and it's for you to determine which ones are actually part of the emergency lighting system. So looking at the record drawings now for MEP, you're going into the health and safety file. It lists out the drawings, and there were no drawings titled emergency lighting. Again, back onto the reflected ceiling plan, the next place to look. Again, we've already looked at this a little bit earlier, so you've got to zoom right in to find anything. Then you find something that's quite useful. It's a schedule of testing and commissioning, and it does mention emergency lighting here. So, but it doesn't actually give you any more information other than whether or not it's being tested. So you start to look into the next section that you're directed to from the fire safety manual, was the electrical testing and commissioning, and you start to piece together these document references. It's 6.12, and if you look carefully at the document reference here, you can see SO2 section CO2 612, and after a while of looking at it, you think, okay, so that's what that document is there, and there it is. So you have to do quite a lot of reading and squinting, and lots of cups of coffee to get through this, believe you me. You open it up, you've got the emergency lighting certificate, and then you've got this reference here and the type, so and a drawing number here as well. So you think, okay, I'm going to go off and look for these types and these drawing numbers. You know, this is my first day at work with this new housing association. I think I'm going to give my notice in already. Electrical testing and commissioning. I'm just putting myself in the shoes of somebody who's just started with a new company. They've been told to get their head around this building. So you scroll down and you see these drawings, which have been sort of photocopied and scanned in. All the pages are wobbly. Once again, you know, if you're allowed to rotate it, you can rotate it. In this case, you weren't allowed to rotate it. You had to scroll using the zoom bars left and right, up and down, until you finally, you know, had gone all the way around the drawing and found out that these two were the emergency lights. Again, it says tender issue. It's not as built. What does ID GF04 relate to? That's unclear. Yeah, it opens up in portrait. It can't be changed to landscape. Again, don't worry, I'm going as fast as I can. So, so again, the same sort of scenario. You're still just trying to find out where is the emergency lighting in this building, and you're opening up more information. So here we've got a lighting certificate. So again, 6.98, that's section 6.98, and there's the emergency lighting certificate, and it's upside down. And I can't read this writing. I probably would struggle even if it was the right way up, but yeah, no chance. So here we've got the emergency lighting certificate, so that's good. Where are we now? We're looking for the associated record drawings. So my comment is, why is there not a list of relevant drawings? So I'm often asked, is there a list of drawings? Is there a schedule, list of equipment? The answer is yes, but there's not a full list or a master list. So you've got to go into different documents to find different lists, but nowhere is the whole list in one master list so that you can check off against it. So only one return for emergency voice control, and it's not emergency lighting. Again, I'm just looking inside the drawing register and record drawings. I'm looking for emergency lighting drawings. Can't find any easily. Installer details, none were found. Installer competence, none were found. And we're going through looking for exit signage or stairs, still trying to think, okay, so, stairs and exits often have emergency lighting. Maybe that will give me a clue. And, lo and behold, stumble across this product data for this particular light, and it rings a bell. I saw that earlier in the specification, so it looks like I'm onto a good thing. But again, I'm not quite sure where these product types tie into it all. This is the lighting system O&M manual, which was found in this list. Now, there's in the O&M manual, I then find the equipment schedule. Now, in the fire safety manual, there was no mention of the O&M manual. So it's only because I stumbled across it whilst looking for the other information that I was pointed towards that I found the O&M manual. When I looked in here, there's an asset reference, which is type exit 1, and that tells me it's an all light, and there's the supplier product, a number, and I can't quite remember what this was all about, but oh yeah, operating instructions also in the O&M manual, and manufacturer's literature is also in the O&M manual. So lighting systems and O&M manual, this is all part of it, maintenance information, fault finding procedures and recommended spares. So that's all the information that was found on that. Did also stumble across this drawing, which wasn't listed anywhere, but opened it up, and it actually has got, it's the electrical services basement lighting layout. It's not the emergency lighting, so it's all in one layout. So if you were looking for emergency lighting, you wouldn't find it. And when you zoom into this drawing, you start to see exit 1. This is the sign. So where is it? Do you see this little code here, B2E? These are these codes here. So finally you start to, the lights come on and you're like, okay, now I get it. Now I get it. So basically this is the manufacturer's way of referring to this item, and this is the drawing that you find it on. But it takes quite a long while to get there. So some possible solutions to these. And it's not easy, really, this whole thing, but I can see a lot of improvement, and everybody is trying now to use file naming conventions, but unfortunately they're being used in different ways by different people. So it's inconsistently wrong rather than consistently wrong. So this is a file naming convention based on ISO 19650 Annex 2021, which is a big improvement on the previous version because it puts the functional breakdown further up the tree, which means you can now have things like emergency lighting and you can package things together. So you've got the main project, sub-project, building services engineer, section 61, emergency lighting for level 1. It's a drawing, the discipline is electrical, and there's the drawing number. So this would be the file naming convention. So ideally, this would be circulated at the very beginning of the project, which is not hard to do. It's an Excel spreadsheet, easy to circulate, easy to understand. Everybody signs up to this. They all produce their task or master information delivery plan. So when they're asked what information they'll be delivering, they come up with their code based on the previous slide, and then they submit that, and then that all gets put into the master information delivery plan, which sits at the top of the tree. And when you've got your database, you look at the master information delivery plan and you can check off against everything that's actually in that database. So this is basically a cornerstone of ISO 19650. Another way to do it is to tag the information and put it all into a project information model. Okay, so here's a project information model that we've put it into. So this particular project, you look for documents. And then,
Cliff, are we nearly there?
Yeah, we're nearly there. Yeah.
Okay, can you speed it up as much as you can, please?
This is going to just take a second. You're rushing me on my spelling now.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, you see, I spelt it wrong now. I can spell emergency. Right. Okay. So this information was eventually brought into the database, and everything was tagged with emergency lighting. Obviously, if it was emergency lighting, and then it found 37 items within a split second. So we're working towards a SharePoint into a database, which is much easier. Okay, that's me done.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, right. So if you want to join that group, the digital handover workstream, put digital or handover in the chat. Just to refresh, if you want to join George's Golden Thread Task Force, put Task Force in the chat. And we're going to now, and if you want to join the WhatsApp group, put WhatsApp in the chat. Okay, we're going to move swiftly on. George, do you want to do the poll or have the results of the first poll?
I think probably do the poll, and then we'll try and do both of them at the end, if that's okay.
Okay.
Right, okay. Right, Jess, put the second poll up, please. Have you put the link into the chat?
Yeah, I just posted it on chat.
Great, right. So the link for the second poll is in the chat. So if you would like to open that up, and we can get the second part of the polls finished. And then if you can share it for me, Jess.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay, right, so here we go. Question 1. Should the fire and emergency information include a floor plan with the locations of all the safety critical assets? Yes or no? Do you think, should the fire and emergency information include a floor plan with the locations of all the safety critical assets? That's yes or no? Okay, number 2. Should the fire and emergency information include a schedule of the safety critical assets and what product models are used? Yes or no? Should the fire and emergency information include a schedule of the safety critical assets and what product models are used? Yes or no? Number 3, do you need to inform the regulator when a fire door is replaced? Yes or no? Do you need to inform the regulator when a fire door is replaced? Okay, number 4, how frequently do we need to check that the automatic opening vents are operational? 12 monthly, 6 monthly, 3 monthly, 1 monthly, weekly or daily? How frequently do we need to check that the automatic opening vents are operational? And the last one, do you believe that an independent third party should check that adequate safety critical information is provided and is being maintained? Yes or no? Do you believe that an independent third party should check that adequate safety critical information is provided and is being maintained? Yes or no? Okay, excellent. We'll be back with those results shortly, very shortly actually. Okay, let's move on now to the DAC work stream, the digital asset capture work stream, which if you want to join that, put DAC in the chat. And Barry.
Oh, hi. Oh, hold on. Oh,
I know, I caught you on the hop.
Yeah, no, it was like, whoa, no warm up or anything. Right, so we did a workshop a few weeks ago on 360 imagery, and that's provoked quite a lot of response and conversation. So what we're planning to do is organize another workshop looking at comparing different data capture technologies and techniques. When you're commissioning this work, you'll probably get lots of survey companies saying they need to do it with X, Y, and Z. And what we want to try and do is give you a sanity check on the pros and cons of those and what you need to be asking them specifically to do. If you've got a number of assets you need to survey to get that data into your systems. So we're proposing that we'll be doing a workshop and we'll circulate details about that in the coming weeks. But if you'd like to put data capture workshops in the chat, so we know that you're interested and we can send you the relevant information, that would be great. So if you want to put data capture workshop, lots of things we'll be looking at: 360 versus LiDAR versus measured building surveys versus all sorts of things, and just trying to give you a sanity check on what you can expect and what you should be asking for, or if you want to do it yourself and you're thinking about what solutions may be out there. It'll be a bit of a whistle stop thing, but we think it's valuable that people know and understand what they're getting themselves into and can make some sensible grown-up choices about what you can do. What has been pointed out to me is that obviously there's an awful lot of buildings that don't fall within the BIM stock. I'd be interested to know how many buildings have got BIM models in them anyway, where we could extract some of this information. But the majority of people seem to be working on buildings that are 20 years old. So there's nothing, quite often it's 2D and even 2D that's not absolutely correct. So that's what this workshop's focusing on, and how we can generate the information that you can work on. In the meantime, if anybody's got any questions, I'm always here to answer those. If you want to, just drop me a line in the chat. Okay. Is that okay for now?
Yes, I think Excellent. It is. So what I was just showing there, that's Andy Cumberpatch from one of the Golden Thread group. So Andy's been experimenting with LiDAR and 360. So basically, Barry and Chris Aldridge there are supporting him on that. So what we're doing is trying to look at the best way of using LiDAR to create floor plans that then we can add 360 photos to. So this is the sort of support that if you're up for the Golden Thread for the digital asset capture workshop, Barry can go through this methodology and show you the different technologies that can be used to do that, but also how that can be done very simply.
Yeah, that's sort of the point. There's an awful lot of myth and legend, and you're relying on a lot of the salespeople who are not necessarily au fait with what we're trying to do. So it's more of a sanity check, if you like, on what technology is there, how much it should cost you, what the implications in the back office work. It's not just about walking around with a camera on your head. It's what you do in order to get those systems and organize them. But it's a key part of what we're trying to do. Unless you've got a way of capturing the data of what's out there, all of this is conjecture. You've got to find a way of relating it to something and doing the assessments, whether that's on site or remotely. So that's what we're going to be focused on. We'd love to see as many people as we can there, because the more we can get out there doing it, the more information, clean information, and the better case studies we're going to have to take and talk to our clients about.
Now we've also got a few 360 cameras that we've been loaning out to building safety managers, for example. So they've been using them to start to become familiar with the process of capturing asset data, 360 asset information. So if that's something that you're interested in, then just reach out and we'll include you in that pilot. Okay, any questions?
Good. Back to you, Richard. Take it away, sir.
Okay, no questions. Right, let's go straight into the results of the first poll, which I found very interesting. Jess, can you put the first poll up? There we go. How well does your CEO FD understand their duties under the Building Services Act? And under half of the people, just over half, said 75 to 100%. So almost half the respondents thought 50% or below. That's a bit scary, isn't it? Right, keep going, Jeff. Sorry.
I'm almost quite encouraged by that. If that's actually the case, that's encouraging.
How confident are you that your current projects will deliver accurate and complete Regulation 38 information? And over half are 50% or below on that one. Okay, scroll down, Jez. My organisation regularly checks that the contents of the fire and emergency file are accurate and will be updated with any changes. So again, just over half, 35 yes, 26 no. And the next one, just. I'm confident that the H&S and O&M information about my building is accurate and will be updated with any changes. Right, that's pretty conclusive, isn't it? 42 no's and 16 yeses. Let's look at the last one on this first poll. Should a fire risk assessment include a check that the information in the fire and emergency information and secure information box is complete and correct? Well, that was overwhelming on this one. Yes, it should. I'd be interested in the three that said no, actually. Okay, let's go straight on to the second poll, Jess. Okay. Should the fire and emergency information include a floor plan with the locations of all the safety critical assets? Everybody said yes on that one. Scroll down more, and should the fire and emergency information include a schedule of the safety critical assets and what product models are installed? And again, totally overwhelming, almost unanimous yes. Okay, number 3. Do you need to inform the regulator when a fire door is replaced? 23 yes and 28 no. So that's very balanced. What's the answer to that, George?
Well, I've been told that it is necessary, but that's the whole point about this community, isn't it? And I think the other thing is that the big question is, it depends. You know, it's the old challenge that we've got. It will depend on what the responsible person requires of the team. Cyprian.
So yes, I've approached the BSR on a number of occasions on this with the HRBs, and it's simply they're saying yes. If you just explain it, the difference between maintenance, repair, and if it's being changed. So if the fire door is being changed, you're just plainly saying yes, you need to report it. If you're adding components that wasn't tested in the fire door, yes, you need to report it. So the answer is yes. Yeah.
That's what I've understood. Does anybody that has a contrary view want to contribute there?
Let's have a no. Speak out.
Well, it's not a no. It's a question. What's the difference between replaced and changed? Because replaced could be a like-for-like replacement, where so that ultimately there's no change, but changed is a different product.
Good point.
Question.
Isn't it?
Tom, my understanding is, and you're probably right. You're more knowledgeable in these things than me, probably. But my understanding is that if something is replaced, unless it's absolutely the same, which is probably unlikely. I think, but there's people more knowledgeable than me. I've been told that it does need to be reported, even if it's in, it might be that it's done as an emergency repair, but you've still got to let them know. Kevin?
Wouldn't it be a notifiable change if it was the same? So, for example, you're telling them that this is the case because it's like for like. If that was the case, because you're just notifying the BSI, it's not saying you've got to stop doing it. I think that's only if it was notified it was like a major change.
Yeah. Okay.
And then non-HRBs, you wouldn't have that issue, I guess, because you'd have to do that through building control in a different route.
Okay, let's scroll and look at number 4. How frequently do we need to check that the automatic opening vents are operational? 12 monthly, 6 monthly, what have we got there? So roughly, I'm trying to add it up and I'm not succeeding. So yeah, most popular is 6 monthly, but it's pretty spread around the middle, isn't it? What's the correct answer for that, George?
I've been told by the smoke control experts that it should be weekly, because it should be the same as the fire alarm tests.
Wow, that's a big difference, isn't it?
Yeah. So, sorry, Martin's an expert in this. Sorry, carry on, Martin.
Yeah, hi all. I put a note on the chat. The recent SCA document guidance on maintenance, firstly to meet the Fire Safety Act, that's now monthly legally. But then if you look at the SCA guide, that will go down to daily, weekly, monthly checks as well. So I think you'll probably find if you look into the SCA guide, it might well say weekly, but monthly is the legal requirement under the Fire Safety Act.
Right. Okay. So it's the sorry, go on.
And that's maintenance, is it, Martin? So my understanding is that a building safety manager, for example, should be checking, just like they check the fire alarm systems working, they should also at the same time, they should do a check to make sure the AOV is working.
Yeah, it's probably worth having a look at the guide, but it's the differential between the competencies. So a competent maintainer will be the 6 monthly, will be monthly. 6 monthly is when they'll have to have a certified maintainer. So it'll be monthly as a minimum by a competent maintainer. So that doesn't have to be fully qualified to something like SDI 19, for instance.
So the key point about that is this is a good example of our expert group potentially coming up with a best practice example of saying under these circumstances this is what should happen. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's absolutely laid out, George, in the recently published Smoke Control Association guide, which is on their resources section.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin.
Excellent. Right, number 5. Just I believe that an independent third party should check that adequate safety critical information is provided and is being maintained. Yes, 39, no, 13. Okay.
So that's broadly opening up, I think, a useful, well, really, that's a market for us then, isn't it? As a collective and individually, but as a collective, we've got much stronger pull if we've got a standard, a best practice standard that we've all signed up to. So we're taking away the opinion side of things. We've got the collective wisdom of the team. So if we can just look, I'm really focusing on Regulation 38 and because that's as I'm trying to remove any sort of complication on it. So that's where we're going with it. Okay.
Okay, so we've just got time. I'll just remind you again, if you want to join the DAC masterclass, we're calling it, put, I can't remember what Barry called it just now.
It's just DAC workshop is
Workshop, that's it, workshop. So just put DAC workshop.
Yeah.
If you want to join the DAC group work stream, put DAC. If you want to join digital handover, put digital. If you want to join George's Golden Thread Task Force, put Task Force. And if you want to join the WhatsApp group, put WhatsApp.
So does everybody think this has been a worthwhile session?
Yes, it was. It was very worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Barry's got a suggestion to make. Sorry, Simon, carry on.
Have I? What was that, George? Remind me.
About the doing a more of a detailed Q&A workshop.
Oh yeah. I was just thinking that obviously this is a fabulous forum, but there's an awful lot of unanswered questions and things we go away and thinking about. I'm just thinking of just floating the idea of actually maybe this is a forum where we can actually do it as a face-to-face thing, having a conference of a day or 2 days to organize and go into these things in more depth, because it's obviously something that's incredibly important, not just within our community, but also to extend and do missionary work to the other, as George says, 95% of the market who really are either not interested or don't know what they don't know, which is probably a fair idea. It's just something to float around the idea of whether this is the right. Obviously, this is incredibly valuable, but I was thinking if we all got together in one room for a couple of days and were able to interrogate these experts, that might be something to think about.
Yeah, and I think the first step on that's probably get the WhatsApp group going.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe that's
starting.
Maybe that's a way of doing it. But I just think that I'm looking at this and I'm sort of new and expanding my knowledge and trying to think how this is relevant. And there's just an incredible resource here. And maybe the viewers. I've just come back from a very similar conference in Prague where we were talking about 3D, and it was fabulous. We met so many different interesting people. It'd be great to think we could do something in the UK. Just to float that idea around. I'm not volunteering to put my hands up to organise it or anything, but just something to bear in mind and think about it. I think it could be incredibly useful.
Now, thank you, Barry. So the poll that we've actually done there is going to give us some very interesting results that we can feed back to the regulator. Does anybody have any objection to us feeding that back? It's all anonymous, but I think this is a really worthwhile thing to let them know that yeah. Anyway, no objections. Great.
Okay. Well, at that juncture, thank you very much for coming along. You'll be getting invites for next month very shortly. Don't worry, and. If we don't see you at one of the work streams before then, we will see you then. Take care. Great session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks, guys.